Before Mike Hodges' 1980 space opera superhero film Flash Gordon, featuring a musical score by Queen, had its major global theatrical release, Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon received what can be fittingly described as one of the most faithful adaptations of the original comic strip. Well, I am strictly talking about the 1979 Filmation series here, officially titled Flash Gordon, but more often known as The New Adventures of Flash Gordon. Truth be told, the animated series was epic in every way. It had us hooked right from the beginning, and honestly speaking, when you have a series that practically throws in things like Earth being in grave danger, a rocket ship blasting into space, and 3 Earthlings attempting to stop a disaster on an alien planet, you just know you are in for a ride. In fact, the 1979 Filmation series closely followed Raymond's 1934 comic strip, and the final episode of the first season brought together the allies Flash Gordon had made in order to strike Mingo City. However, for the second season, NBC executives felt that the original serial format was a little too complex for the children watching the cartoon, and therefore they decided to change the format. Well, this resulted in the addition of Gremlin the Dragon, and the rest, as you all know, is history. So come and take a dive with me into this nostalgic era as I explore how the original animated series came to an end. It is not what you think, so stay tuned with me to find out. Filmation Star Wars moment: why this Flash Gordon mattered. Since there is no other way to put this, I am not going to beat around the bush here. Like it or not, it was the massive success of Star Wars in 1977 that acted as a catalyst, reviving and simultaneously transforming the science fiction genre. Filmation took the opportunity and produced Flash Gordon in 1979 with the goal of capitalizing on the renewed public interest in classic space adventures. That being said, the 1979 Filmation series was designed as a direct tribute to Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon comic strip, and as a matter of fact, it went to great lengths to recreate the pulp grandeur and adventure of the original source material. In fact, I have to say that the first season of the animated series was fairly faithful to Raymond's comic strip, from the opening narration featuring the same 3 central characters taking off on a desperate mission to save their planet from the evil schemes of Ming the Merciless, to crash landing on Mongo and instantly finding themselves right in the middle of a planetary war. The show centers on the same core trio of Flash Gordon, Dale Arden, and Dr. Hans Zarkov, while also bringing to life the royal allies, iconic queens, and female rulers from the comics. Come to think of it, the project was initially conceived as a live-action television film, with Samuel A. Peoples writing the screenplay. Here, let me explain things properly. Lou Scheimer later recalled that NBC balked when Filmation estimated that the live-action production would cost approximately $10 million, and asked the studio to produce it as an animated project instead. NBC committed $1 million, but that was still not enough to complete the ambitious production. Norm Prescott helped close the financing gap by pre-selling the foreign television and theatrical rights to Dino De Laurentiis for $1.5 million. De Laurentiis was interested in producing his own live-action Flash Gordon film and needed to reach an agreement with Filmation over the relevant rights. He would later use those rights for the campy 1980 Flash Gordon film. Coming back to NBC, when the network saw the completed animated work, it decided to expand the project into what ultimately became the 1979 Filmation series. Scheimer's published account also makes it clear that the creative team wanted to honor Raymond's original comic strips through the visual style, serialized storytelling, dangerous situations, and cinematic scale of the production. The cast of Mongo, heroes, queens, and a merciless emperor. In contrast to the campier versions, Flash Gordon in the 1979 animated television series is a capable and serious leader. He is athletic, instinctively courageous, and becomes the reluctant rebel leader battling on Mongo to save his home planet. Dale Arden happens to be Flash Gordon's loyal partner, helping him navigate the dangers of Mongo. Mind you, Dale should not be confused with some helpless damsel in distress. She is sharp, resourceful, and has repeatedly exhibited courage, initiative, and political wisdom. Dr. Hans Zarkov, the third member of the core trio, is a brilliant, eccentric scientist who serves as the technical expert and steadfast scientific companion to Flash. No points for guessing, Dr. Zarkov is the one who builds the spaceship that the trio uses to travel to Mongo. Speaking of the allies, there is King Thun of the Lion Men, Prince Baron of the Forest Kingdom of Arborea, and King Voltan, the ruler of the Hawkmen. Please know that while each of the three is initially skeptical and they share a fair amount of animosity toward one another, the trio eventually becomes part of Flash Gordon's alliance. As for the female monarchs of Mongo, the list includes Queen Undina of the underwater civilization of Coralia, Queen Freya of the Ice Kingdom of Phrygia, Queen Desira of the Jungle Kingdom of Tropica, and Azura, the Witch Queen of Sik. Each of these queens is a powerful female ruler whose domain and allegiance play a crucial role in the war against Ming. Next comes Ming the Merciless, or should I say the ruthless, power-hungry emperor of Mongo. Ming is cold and calculating, and it is safe to say that he pretty much lives up to his moniker. The ruler maintains control over much of Mongo, all the more effectively because this unmatched tyrant keeps its various kingdoms at odds with one another. Divide and rule, this has always been Ming's policy, or at least that was the case until Flash Gordon and his companions showed up. Last but not least, there is Princess Aura, the fierce and imperious daughter of Ming. I have to admit that her relationship with her father is quite complicated. Since her actions are often driven by her own desires, she does not blindly obey him. If I have still not been clear, Princess Aura is someone who will not hesitate to act against her father's wishes if she wants something for herself. Therefore, it is not surprising to find her playing both sides. Season 1. A true serial that built toward war. Believe me when I say that I am more than happy to walk you through this part. The major thing about this 1979 Filmation series is that the first season functions as a single, continuous serial plot instead of a collection of completely independent episodes. Tell me something honestly, do you think I am wrong when I say that the first season's story builds up almost like an old-fashioned matinee serial? I mean, it does lure the viewers back for the next episode, so it certainly gets its job done. When I watched the new adventures of Flash Gordon, I clearly remember the events carrying over. The whole thing felt like an ongoing adventure in which the heroes, instead of returning to Earth by the end of every episode, found themselves stranded on Mongo. That being said, I also cannot disregard the fact that Flash and his companions were simultaneously gaining allies in an evolving, high-stakes war against Ming. Let me elucidate things further. It is in the early episodes of the first season that Flash and his companions see how fractured this people of Mongo are, especially under the sinister tyrant's rule. You see, Mongo is not simply a united empire under Ming. It is made up of many divided kingdoms. Ming, being the archetypal villain that he is, has managed to keep the kingdoms of Mongo subordinate to his will, primarily through divide and conquer tactics and military force. In fact, Ming's willingness to destroy anyone before they can stand in his way makes him quite formidable. As the storyline moves forward, Thun, Baron, and Voltan choose to put aside their differences and work together alongside Flash. It is in the episode titled Into the Waterworld that we first get a glimpse of the exotic underwater realm of Coralia and finally meet Queen Undina. No points for guessing that in the episode titled The Frozen World we see King Freya and her ice kingdom of Phrygia. As more episodes unfold, more intriguing kingdoms of Mongo are discovered, in addition to Flash recruiting reluctant rulers and turning them into allies. By the time we reach the episode titled The Desert Hawk, many have already pledged their forces to fight the battle and free Mongo from Ming the Merciless. In Ming's Last Battle, which happens to be the final episode of the first season, what viewers get to witness is not some random showdown. It is the end result of 16 episodes of continuously building alliances and narrow escapes. Ming's Last Battle, the finale that actually feels like an ending. I don't know about you, but to me the final episode of the first season was the emotional high point of the whole series. In Ming's Last Battle, practically every race and leader Flash has united throughout the first season assembles for one massive synchronized assault against Ming. It was a completely different feeling to witness every faction fighting together instead of against one another, and it was at that moment that Ming's reputation as the dreaded tyrant began to crumble. I have to say that I absolutely loved how the first season was carefully put together as a continuous, serialized space opera that remained remarkably faithful to Raymond's original comic strip. You see, over the course of the preceding 15 episodes, Flash and his companions methodically brought the fractured, warring kingdoms of Mongo into a unified rebel alliance. Therefore, it is only fitting to acknowledge that the 16th episode, which is also the final episode of the first season, delivers a grand payoff. Ming's forces are dispersed and his capital is breached. Flash bursts into Ming's wedding ceremony with Dale and confronts the Emperor in a sword fight. However, there is no robot double reveal in this episode. Flash forces the real Ming to flee in his rocket ship. Prince Baron then proclaims himself regent of Mongo, establishing the long-awaited freedom of its people. The episode ends with Flash and Dale planning to explore other parts of Mongo, before the eerie sound of Ming's laughter reveals that he is still alive somewhere in outer space. Well, I firmly believe that Ming's last battle serves as the definitive structural and narrative conclusion to the epic, serialized storyline originally envisioned for the first season. Even though Ming's escape leaves the door open, and I am not going to deny that, you have to agree with me when I say that the principal storyline still receives a satisfying conclusion.
If I can make it to the ship, I'll have some protection.
NBC steps in, from serial epic to standalone stories. Blame NBC if you want to, because when the second season aired in 1982, NBC insisted that the serial format be dropped and the stories be made more episodic. In terms of content, there was also a major shift from mature, serialized drama to lighter, more child-friendly adventures. The single, continuous story arc was replaced with short, standalone stories. In short, the unbroken, edge-of-your-seat cliffhanger storytelling that we saw in the first season, the kind that directly carried consequences and character alliances into the next episode, was replaced by two self-contained, shorter segments within each broadcast instead of one full-length chapter. Remember how the first season was so loyal to the original comic strips? I mean, that was the whole charm, right? Well, I hate to say that things changed rather quickly. For the second season, the violence was reduced and the plots increasingly centered on explicit moral lessons, right and wrong themes, and problem solving. And if you thought that things could not get any worse, a baby dragon named Gremlin was added to the existing cast to appeal to younger viewers, and, if I may add, mainly for comic relief. No wonder the storytelling became more formulaic, and it makes sense that much of the narrative weight simply vanished. What more can you expect when there is a baby dragon busy undermining the gravity of almost every conflict? Royal Wedding, Memory Banks, and Parallel Worlds, the second season's almost endings. Even though network restrictions significantly hindered the second season of Filmation's The New Adventures of Flash Gordon, there are a few noteworthy segments that I would like to highlight here. I will begin with Royal Wedding, which was written by Paul Dini. If you paid close attention to the first season, you will agree with me when I say that Season 1 had its primary focus on the war to liberate Mongo from Ming the Merciless. But there was also a love triangle. I am particularly talking about Prince Baron yearning for Princess Aura, while Princess Aura was completely infatuated with Flash. With Prince Baron and Princess Aura finally tying the knot in Royal Wedding, this particular segment effectively ended the emotional drama that fueled a large portion of the first season's subplots. Moving on, the episode Flashback is also particularly notable because of its emphasis on the characters' emotions and relationships. In Dan DiStefano's Flashback, Flash Gordon encounters an evil duplicate of himself after ending up in another dimension. Not only does this reinforce the idea that Mongo's universe includes alternate realities, but it also shows Dale cleverly identifying her true love from the imposter Flash, making this particular episode all the more memorable. Then there is J. Michael Reeves's Gremlin's Finest Hour, the final segment of the entire series, which places Gremlin at the center of the action. While the dragon plays a crucial role in saving the day, the segment comes nowhere close to functioning like Ming's last battle.
I think I can beat them to the ship. Uh-oh. Looks like it's time.
Gremlin's finest hour, the last episode nobody treated as a finale. While I agree that Gremlin's finest hour was the final segment of the whole series, it was never structured like a definitive series finale. Instead, it functioned as a standard episodic adventure that simply did not have the impact of a proper climax. Let us take a look at the story. In Gremlin's finest hour, Flash, Dale, Thun, and Gremlin are sent to investigate the North Polar region of Mongo after Dr. Zarkov detects a force field there. The area was once home to an ancient civilization that vanished as the temperature dropped. When the group arrives, it does not take long for them to discover an isolated tribe of lizard people living there. As the story moves forward, Gremlin is captured by the lizard people, and Flash and his companions are later taken to him. The trio is surprised to learn that the lizard people seriously believe Gremlin to be the reincarnation of their god, Gargantus. While Gremlin ultimately saves the day and heroically fulfills his role as the team's pet, I think placing the narrative weight of the last broadcast story on a secondary mascot character emphasizes that the episode was intended to be a typical Saturday morning adventure rather than the grand farewell usually expected from a series finale. Even though the final segment ends, the overarching political struggle on Mongo does not really change. If you ask me, I will tell you what was missing from the ending. First of all, there was no definitive defeat or death of Ming. He was still the same looming tyrant at large. Next, there was no large-scale alliance attack like the one we witnessed in Ming's last battle. I cannot help but admit that Ted Pedersen's first season finale had raised the bar, and I, as a fan, had high expectations. Furthermore, the main protagonists, Flash, Dale, and Dr. Zarkov, did not have a farewell exchange or a parting conversation. That is not all. There was no final mission, lasting closure, or any other indication that the series was coming to an end. Truth be told, if you happen to be someone who watched the series without understanding its production background, it would be perfectly normal to assume that more adventures were coming. Unfortunately, J. Michael Reeves' Gremlin's finest hour was simply another story at the end of the day.
It worked! Mongo's changing course!
The Greatest Adventure of All, the movie that offered an alternate ending. While Flash Gordon: The Greatest Adventure of All was developed before the television series, its broadcast history is slightly more complicated than it first appears. The animated film was the original project Filmation produced for the franchise, and it was written by Samuel A. Peoples. NBC's response to the project led to the creation of the animated television series. However, the film itself did not make its American television debut until August 21, 1982. It had already been broadcast in the United Kingdom on December 27, 1981. Its American premiere therefore occurred before the second season began its NBC run, not after the series had been canceled. For that reason, it was not literally a post-cancellation finale. Nevertheless, because the film presented a complete version of the story with a more conclusive ending, later viewers can experience it as an alternate conclusion to Filmation's version of Flash Gordon. Of course, there were differences. The film featured a rather fascinating subplot involving Ming's covert provision of military technology to Adolf Hitler during World War II. No wonder the movie presented its story with stronger continuity and more elaborate animation. Yes, it also made extensive use of rotoscoping. With that being said, let us look at how the film offered a stronger sense of closure than the television series. Truth be told, it was frustrating to watch the disconnected standalone stories of the second season after the heavily serialized first season. Naturally, Flash Gordon: The Greatest Adventure of All felt like a breath of fresh air because of its seamless and carefully structured narrative. Above all, the film's conclusion provided a strong sense of completion that the final television episode lacked. Flash successfully altered Mongo's drive mechanism before the planet could collide with Earth, diverting the rogue planet away from Earth but leaving it unable to return. At the end, Flash and Dale acknowledge that they have nothing to regret because they are together, embracing Mongo as their new home of adventure. Why it really stopped, ratings, format, and network priorities. If you take a look back at things, the second season of the Filmation series suffered from a notoriously difficult broadcast schedule. The network placed it in a challenging time slot, which also left it vulnerable to sports preemptions. When I say a difficult time slot, please know that the show was scheduled to air at 12:30 p.m. Eastern and 11:30 a.m. Central, meaning it often competed with regional and national sports broadcasts. What I am trying to say here is that the second season was incredibly difficult for some viewers to track. Unlike the first season, which remained close to the original comic strips through continuous cliffhangers and relatively mature themes, the second season consisted of lighter, episodic segments. The scheduling and format changes may have contributed to the season's weaker reception and visibility. However, there is not enough firm evidence to claim that the time slot alone directly caused the program's cancellation. The series ended after the completion of its second season order. Afterlife, reruns, DVDs, and the legacy question. The show reintroduced itself to a targeted audience of genre lovers when it was eventually aired on the Sci-Fi Channel's Cartoon Quest. In case you didn't know this, The New Adventures of Flash Gordon was also sold to foreign broadcasters and aired as part of RTE1's children's programming roster in Ireland. As far as DVD releases are concerned, a 3-disc package of the complete series was released by Delta Home Entertainment in 2005. BCI Eclipse Entertainment later released The New Adventures of Flash Gordon, the complete series, in 2006. Furthermore, 14 episodes from the first season were released by Mill Creek Entertainment in 2009. Legacy-wise, the first season of the 1979 series is widely considered one of Filmation's finest works, and one of the most accurate screen adaptations of Flash Gordon. As for the second season, it is considered lighter and less important when compared to the first, but it is nevertheless noteworthy because of the work of writers including Paul Dini and J. Michael Reeves. The way I see it, Filmation's Flash Gordon ended twice. The first season, its original serialized storyline ended with the episode Ming's Last Battle. The second time, the television series simply stopped with Gremlin's Finest Hour, an ordinary adventure that happened to become the last episode. Flash Gordon, the greatest adventure of all, then gave audiences an alternate, more conclusive version of Filmation's story, although it was not produced as a sequel to the television series. Anyway, now that I am pretty much at the end of my video, I have 2 questions for all of you. My first question is, do you think a classic pulp hero needs to have a neat ending? Please think before you answer. My second question is, do you think Filmation's Flash Gordon received the ending it deserved? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. As for me, I promise to come back with another favorite video soon. Thanks for watching, and have a nice one.